Well, a very big hello to you all, and welcome back for another video here on my YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing another box opening and review, and I've been out and bought a few bits and pieces, and this is quite a lovely Locomotive, so I thought I'd share the first opening and a bit of a review with you. So without further ado, let's take a closer look. What I've got here today is one of the Bachmann Class 37 locomotives, and I picked this up pretty reasonably priced second hand, and it just goes to show that in these days of ever escalating prices, it still pays to shop around and see what you can find in your local model shops on the second hand section. And in this case, I did really luck out, and as you can see, the box is a little bit of damage, but even the box, for those people who collecting these things and keeping the boxes is very important, is still in pretty good condition. So I'm going to show you the end there, and I've got catalogue number 32-781A, and it says there class 37/0 diesel 37034 BR blue weathered. Now I think it's been renumbered because it doesn't actually carry that running number, but I'm going to slide it here out of the box. And it's a pretty standard Bachmann packaging, and it even comes with well, there's no additional, no, we've not got any additional fitted pieces, but it's still got all of the exploded diagram, which just gives you a clue how it comes apart, where all the bits go. And actually these class 37s are pretty easy to take the lid off to get inside if you want to DCC chip them. So I've never had any problems, although it has to be said that my other 37s were very early release. Now, Bachmann, when they first brought out the Class 37, it was released with, it wasn't all-wheel drive. It was sort of a, from memory, it was a bow, one bow wheel arrangement, and a lot of people actually complained about that. I've never had a problem with the earlier Bachmann models of the Class 37 in terms of haulage capacity and running characteristics. I've always found them pretty good, but they then, in light of all these people who were complaining so much, they went back and they upgraded the chassis to be all-wheel drive. And I think at the same time they also took the opportunity to change a few other bits and pieces, made them easier to DCC chip for a start. But as you can see, this locomotive no longer carries the identity 37034. Instead, we've got the running number 37116. Now, I'm assuming it still is a 37/0. There were quite a lot of these things, but the number there, if I hold it against the light, I can kind of see where they've used T-cut to get the old number off and then renumber it. But the actual renumbering job on this has been done very well. And that's another point worth noting about second-hand models. If you get one that somebody has done a very good, very professional job at either pro weathering or professional renumbering, it's a very good way of getting a locomotive identity that you don't necessarily have the ability to find ready-made, ready to run. And if you don't feel that your skills are up to the job, you can look out and get one that somebody else has already done that job for you. It's worth noting as well, it's been pointed out to me that the 6 at the end is a little bit out of line. But just remember that the full-sized locomotives weren't always numbered up ever so neatly. These were kind of a vinyl stick-on number, and I've seen pictures of locomotives where whoever applied the numbers got them a bit squiffy. In fact, sometimes there's a picture of, I think it's 08173, I could be wrong on that, where they've actually used a completely different size number for one of the numbers. So a little bit of variety actually is perfectly normal. The rest of the locomotive, if this is actually the standard Bachmann weathering job, it is incredibly well done, but I suspect that this locomotive has also seen some additional pro weathering, and actually it's a really, really good finish. It's got this perfect grubby, grimy, almost slightly matte finish, which is very realistically done. The actual livery itself, we've got the small logo BR blue, and this would be suitable from probably early 1970s through into the 1980s, when a lot of these locomotives started to receive alternative liveries in terms of the sectorization, things like Intercity, ScotRail, regional railways, but also mainline, triple grey construction sector, things like that. So this is actually quite a long-lived livery, and it's perfect for the period that I model. The face on this locomotive, we've got the split head code boxes, and the centre doors are still shown as being intact. So it's an unrefurbished Class 37, and it's quite different actually from the locomotives which Bachmann modelled originally, had the domino head code. So this is actually some welcome variety to my locomotive fleet. The buffers are supposed to be sprung, but they feel like they've been glued in the fully retracted position, and I'm not quite sure why that might be. They may have become damaged, but actually sprung buffers are not really a deal clincher for me. So, as long as it doesn't look damaged, I'm quite happy with that. So it's not really a big problem. It looks here that somebody has fitted the buffer beam detail, but then trimmed it all to allow for the tension lock coupling to also be fitted into work. So I'm looking at that. It's a bit of a peculiar thing to do. I suppose it stops there being little weird holes in the buffer beam, but that's why there's not a bag of additionally applied bits and pieces in this. But that is sometimes what you face with second-hand locomotives, and again, is not really a deal clincher for me. If we go to the underside of this locomotive, this is where it gets interesting compared with some of the earlier Class 37s. We've got that all-wheel drive that I talked about in both bogies, so the grip on this locomotive is very, very good. It's also all-wheel pickup, so electrical continuity is generally pretty good with these models. But what is really obvious here is we've got these two hidden switches, and it says they're tail and cab. And what this is about is you can turn off the tail lights and turn off the cab lights. And it was one of the criticisms when Bachmann started fitting these with directionally controlled lights and with internal cab lights, was actually it wasn't particularly prototypical. It was a bit gimmicky, because the only time you would see tail lights on these is when the locomotive is running a light engine with no train behind it. So there's actually very few circumstances where you would use the direction controlled lights. So Bachmann added this micro switch to turn that function off, and it's actually quite a welcome addition. The other switch controls the internal cab light, and actually it's a bit like trying to drive your car at night with the internal light on. You end up with weird reflections, you just don't do it. So by the same token, having one of these locomotives running around your layout with the cab light on, you just wouldn't see that happen. It would, for the same reason that you wouldn't use your internal light in your car whilst you're driving. They wouldn't have the cab light on in these when they're moving around. So it's very, very welcome on that front too, to get this micro switch to be able to change that. And you can change these with a fingernail or even with a small jeweler's screwdriver if you need to. They're quite easy to do. The only thing you have to do is to pull the locomotive off the track to do it. We've got these fairly solidly attached fuel tanks underneath. This locomotive appears to be fitted with dual fuel tanks, so for long range. And looking back to the side here, we don't have opening cab doors. That was a gimmick that Bachmann didn't bother putting on these locomotives. And again, it doesn't detract, and if it makes the model cheaper, then I'm really welcoming that. The cab windows aren't particularly flush finished, and certainly later models did improve on that, but it is not really a great detraction. The grills are very nicely done. These grills here, they're not separately attached parts as far as I can tell, but actually the way they've been done in the tooling is pretty good. So I'm quite happy with the representation there. These grills, however, appear to be a separately inserted detail from behind. On the real locomotives, these grills were a lot more chunky, so it does look fairly reasonable, but they do appear to be recessed a little bit more than I suspect they should be in real life. We've also got grills at the nose end, and the weathering job on this, I should point this out, these wouldn't get sooty. The only thing that's inside these is a lot of electrical gear, things like that. So you wouldn't find these vents being sooted up. And you can see from this weathering job, the person who's done this job has done it pretty faithfully for that. So we're not seeing a mess of black sootiness around these vents. I like that attention to detail. There's also a few these little sort of recessed handholds stroke footholes for being able to climb up on the side for maintenance purposes. These are all nicely done. We've also got, I'm not sure, these might actually be lifting lugs for being able to lift the locomotive off its bogies. I'm not entirely sure on that, so don't quote me. In terms of tampo detail on this, there's not a huge amount, but it doesn't need a huge amount. We've got the BR double arrow of indecision nicely and crisply represented on there. We've got the overhead warning flashes denoting a locomotive from the 1970s period where it could be running under East Coast or West Coast mainline wires, and that was just a warning to staff not to get up on the roof and get too close to touching that, because it would be quite a shocking incident if they did. We've also got tampo printed here, the running number, although actually I say that's tampo printed. On the actual original 37034 model, it would be tampo printed, but these have been nicely applied from decals, and actually they're pretty well done. So unless you're looking really close, it isn't obvious that they have been retro applied. We've also got the TOPS data panel, and again, it looks like it may have been removed and then reapplied. So I'm going to have to look at that closely under magnification. But that might not actually be the tampo printed TOPS panel. But even so, under normal magnification, looking at it with your eyes, and especially with this coat of weathering, it doesn't really matter if you can't read that. The only other details is that there's a few gauges on here that have been faithfully printed up, and I'm looking there very closely. I suspect under magnification we'll actually be able to read some of the detail on those gauges and see the needles, and it's just testament to how good the tampo printing has become on these. Looking on the roof, we've got some pretty good roof detail, and Bachmann have been doing this well very much from the start. Inside the see-through grille, which is flush fitted and very nicely done, we've got a little fan in there. I know certainly on the earlier ones, if you blow down into it, you can spin the fan. I'm not really quite sure what the point of that is because they're not driven from the motor. In terms of other detail, we've got fairly subdued roof access hatches, exhaust ports, and a few other bits and pieces, but it's all nicely done. The roofs of these locomotives were fairly simple in real life, so it's been faithfully reproduced on the Bachmann model. In terms of running characteristics, I had this locomotive running out in the shed, and it's run really well, and you'll have seen little snippets of that in a previous video, so you've already had a sneak peek of it. I know a few people may have spotted that this was going to be up and coming in a box opening and review video. Overall, it's a pretty solid model from Bachmann. We've got couplings here in NEM pockets attached to the bogies, and I've got slimline couplings factory attached in there, but it means it's very easy if you want to fit KDs to this or any other type of coupling, or indeed if you want to display the locomotive with the full buffer beam pipe detail, you can remove those couplings entirely. Pretty solid model, very happy to acquire this at a very good price for the collection. So again, as I said before, well worth looking at what's available second-hand in your local model shop. Support your local model shop and they will be there to support you. Well, I hope that was very informative to you. Wasn't that a lovely model? But until next time, you take very good care of yourself, and don't forget to like this video, share it too, and also, if you've not already done so, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and you'll be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. But you be looking after yourself, and I hope to see you back here next time on the Jenny Kirk channel. And well, until then, take good care of yourself. Bye for now. Today's video has been brought to you in part thanks to the generous donation of my fans on Patreon. And a special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Mark Anthony, Michael Churchwood, Mark McShane, and Bob 310. If you'd like to help support the show, head on over to patreon.com/Jennifer Kirk. Thank you. Today's video has been brought to you by my books, Bringing Home the Stars, Twinkle Little Star, and also you can get the complete comic collections of All Over the House, Books 1, Books 2, and also the wacky zany Life of Knob T. Mouse. Thanks, and catch you later.